Hi guys, my name is Davis and welcome to my channel where we cover all things tech, and today we are talking about the Oukitel C38, which is quite possibly one of the most affordable phones I have ever used. It's literally only $230 RRP and $150 on sale at the moment. I literally have bought phone cases that cost as much as this. Like this one. But the question is it actually usable? Can you buy a phone that you can actually imagine using for less money than the price of an average Amazon Kindle? Let's find out. And this video is brought to you by the Ultra-Human Ring Air. When I moved to the UK recently, unfortunately, I couldn't bring my massive tech collection with me. In fact, things got so bad that I even had to leave my beloved Palm collection behind in Australia. Because extra luggage is so expensive, I could only bring the bare essentials, and the Ultra-Human Ring Air, well, over the past few months, it's become essential to me. Not only is it the most lightweight smart ring on the market, but it's also among the most comfortable, and it brings you fantastic and actually useful health data. It tells you when's the best time to have a coffee, the best time you should go to bed, and that your temperature is higher, and they should probably relax a little more. And the best thing is that the battery life actually lasts up to 5 days, so you barely have to think about charging it. I absolutely love that it's a smart piece of technology that doesn't look like a smart piece of technology, and that's probably the most amazing part about it. You can buy the Ultra-Human Ring Air through the link in my bio and receive 10% off your purchase if you use my code Davis10. Okay, so let's answer the elephant in the room. What even is an Alcatel? Because it's not a name that I imagine would be familiar to 99% of the phone buying audience. Well, Oukitel is a Chinese-based phone maker that actually started in 2007 and is actually best known for their tough phones, although they do create rugged tablets, watches, and budget smartphones as well. They seem to be most proud of their durability and also their battery life, so let's see if any of these qualities make themselves known with their latest release, the C38. Firstly, let's see what's in the box. Despite being one of the most affordable phones you can buy, the box actually contains far more than your average flagship smartphone. Because inside the box, not only do you get your phone, but it also comes with a power adapter, a USB cable, a SIM eject tool, a screen protector, and even a case. I mean, it's far from the nicest case in the world, as it is quite gummy, and I suspect that it will yellow quite quickly, but hey, it's free. And the hardware really isn't that bad either. So on the front, we've got a 6.6-inch Full HD plus 60Hz screen with a teardrop notch, and this is actually one of the best parts of this phone because it's actually a seriously good looking LCD. Now, I'm not saying that it's amazing because it clearly isn't, but it is nice and sharp. The colors look pretty decent. The whites look nice and pleasant, and it evenly gets decently bright at 480 nits. It's not bad at all. It looks way better than a lot of screens that I've seen at around this price, and I dare say the colors look more pleasant than the far more expensive 8849 Tank 3 Pro phone. I can only really knock it for being stuck at 60Hz when some competitors offer 90, but when a far more expensive iPhone 15 is stuck on 60 as well, it's not something that I can really complain about. The bezels around the screen that's covered with Gorilla Glass 5 are also reasonably sized, and the chin really isn't so bad either. It's also relatively thin despite having a massive battery at 8.8mm, and it's only 200 grams in weight, which is ridiculously light for how large this phone is. It's significantly lighter, for example, than an iPhone 15 Pro Max, which is made of lightweight titanium. It's not all great though. While it might look like it's made of metal and glass, the enclosure is actually entirely plastic, which does keep the weight down, but it does feel a little bit cheap. But again, this phone is cheap. and it really isn't a concern when you've got the case on, but it does make me question the durability a little bit. Now, I'm not especially strong, but even I can visibly bend this phone a little bit without too much effort. On the upside though, while they are plastic, the buttons aren't too mushy and they've got a very positive action. And the fingerprint / power button combo works well, and it's quick and accurate. Down here we do have a mono speaker, but it does sound pretty good, and of course it charges via USB-C. And if we take a look at the back here, there is more than a slight resemblance to Oppo's A series phones. Surely they could have been a little bit more original than this. On my version at least, the back is a shiny and thin plastic white, which calls to mind the iPhone 3GS. We've got a logo down here, and unfortunately there is no wireless charging. Wireless charging, in my opinion, is one of my non-negotiables, but I guess at this price is expected to have been cut out. One trend that I can't stand though is the fact that they have omitted wireless charging, but they felt the need to add both a VGA resolution depth camera and a 2-megapixel macro camera, both of which are completely useless. I'll get into this later, but the portrait images are horrendous and the macro images are almost as bad. I mean, just why? And I also just love how it says advanced ultra sensor. It's almost as bad as Oppo's AI innovative camera claim on the back, which is just completely unnecessary and, to be honest, kind of cringe. Okay, rant over now. Now let's talk about what's inside this phone, and it's basically exactly what you might expect of a budget phone. It's powered by an absolutely ancient MediaTek MT8788, which was introduced all the way back in 2018. And even back then, it wasn't especially impressive. It runs off an equally ancient 12nm process, and it's got 4 efficient cores and 4 performance cores. The Geekbench scores aren't pretty. It's got a Geekbench 6 single core score of 317, which should mean that it's basically too slow to function, and a multi-core of 1241. To put it into perspective, that's less than half of the single core performance of an iPhone 7, but it is a higher multi-core score, to be fair. More positively, however, on my unit at least, there's a sizable 8GB of RAM and 128GB of storage, which is expandable to 1TB. I have been told that there is a slight spec change for the production units compared to this pre-production one, however. While I do have 8GB of RAM here, if you were to buy one, you would only receive 6GB of RAM. However, you would get double the storage at 256 instead of 128, which I think is absolutely massive for the price. And of course, again, you can add more via the micro SD card reader. Okay, so we've seen that the specs are woeful, but when comparing it to its nearest competitors, namely the Oppo A38 and Samsung Galaxy A05, the specs are actually equivalent or somewhat better here. So it's very much par of the course in this class. And yes, I know, I am spoiled from using all of the latest flagship phones, but do you know what I actually discovered after using this for a week? I actually didn't hate using this phone. In fact, it was actually okay. Yes, apps took longer than I wanted to open. Yes, the scrolling is slow and janky. And yes, the keyboard sometimes doesn't keep up with the inputs. But it actually made me think, if $150 is all you can afford and you need to spend that on a new smartphone, then you can actually end up with something that is more than usable. And that's what this phone is. It's a very usable smartphone for not a lot of money. So as we've been saying, this does run a relatively stock version of Android 13, and they've changed a few things around, like having the control center being separated from the notifications, which is triggered by a swipe down from the upper right corner of the display. But it does overall feel like the Android 13 that you might know and love. What you might not love though are probably the lack of software updates. Look, I don't know what the future holds, but there has been no mention of software updates, and that probably means that it's not going to get Android 14, but I would love to see Oukitel prove me wrong. And now we come to quite possibly one of my favorite parts of the device, and that is the battery life. For some reason, I just can't kill this thing. I've gone for 2 days on this thing and still had 20% left at the end of the second night. It lasts so long. I don't know if it's the mix of the slow but efficient processor and the large battery, or if it's just witchcraft, but never have I needed to worry about if this phone would last or not. The charging speed is limited to just 18 watts though, which isn't super slow, but it isn't extraordinary in this day and age. And now let's talk about the cameras. The front camera is a 32 megapixel unit, and it's the same one that you see on a lot of budget phones, and it really isn't very good. It looks dull and very soft. The video is also limited to just 1080p, and it's kind of shaky, so not impressive there either. The 48 megapixel main sensor is a little bit better though. It's decently large at 1:2.0 inches in size, and the lens is f1.97, which is decently bright, and the images that it takes, They're okay. If you use HDR, the images do have very odd exposure settings and they look very artificial. But if you turn that off, the dynamic range is a little bit poor. But the images look quite pleasant in a sort of 2012 camera phone sort of way. It's not bad. The video is limited to 1080p and it doesn't look great though. Stabilization is virtually non-existent. Everything looks weirdly over-sharpened and over-processed, and there's a jankiness to the exposure changes that call to mind again a camera phone from 2012. It's usable, but it's not exactly something to write home about. What I am a little bit confused about though are the inclusion of the 0.3 megapixel depth camera that, from my understanding, doesn't do anything at all because the portrait images are just awful, and the 2 megapixel macro camera that takes worse macro images than if you just cropped in on the main camera. It's unfathomable that on a phone where every single penny counts, that they decided to spend money on these features that do absolutely nothing and would probably never be used. I would far rather see those dollars being used to improve the main camera or just add wireless charging to the phone. So basically you can tell that I've got a few problems with this phone, but the thing is I have to come back to reality and come back to the point and remember that this phone is only $150 US. That is literally nothing in this day and age. That is one round of drinks on a night out. That is the price of an average pair of new sneakers. The fact that you can get a smartphone that still feels like a smartphone to use at that price is unbelievable. And the fact that the screen is absolutely lovely and the battery life is immense and it's got a pretty good speaker too are just the icing on the Aldi cake. If you only have $150 to spend on a smartphone, the Oukitel C38 really is a very, very good choice. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. If you've got any questions about this phone, let me know below as well. Otherwise, I hope that you are having a lovely day. And on that note, toodaloo.